Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Charles Fernandez, and I am back for another edition of the 3D Upgrade Project. This is my second broadcast of the day, and I'm going to be trying a tool that you have never seen me use before, and hopefully it will help you in the way that I'm hoping that it helps me. Now, to begin, I'm going to show you some of my older work. This is a render that I did of a shopping plaza that I created. Well, it was a recreation of a shopping plaza that actually exists, called the Americana in Glendale, California. And it's been part of my ongoing portfolio upgrade to revisit this project and see if I can make some substantial changes to improve the overall quality of the piece, because I think that it's kind of there are things about it that I really like, but there are also things about it that really bug me and have been getting in the way, I think, of me getting a quality modeling job. So, speaking specifically of right now, of the trees and the foliage, because I'll be perfectly honest, I will be brutally honest with my own work, these trees look like ass. So the point of this exercise today will be taking a look at the plants, the shrubs over here, the little bushes over here along the fountain's edge, and I'll be creating some new bushes. Let's take a look at some of the other renders. Yeah, see, I've got like these really simplistic flat cards that I've done this number to, like the little X and whatever. But it's not it's not at the level of the rest of the project. I want to, because like these trees, it's an environment model, and I can't have crappy trees as stand-ins for an environment that looks like the rest of it looks like this, and the trees look like garbage. So, yeah, I'm in the process of upgrading the textures, fixing some of the modeling work. Most of the modeling is fine except for the shrubbery, and I'll be looking at that right now. So let me minimize this. This was an attempt to make things a little bit better on the shrubbery. I have made it a little more haphazard and dense, with some variation in the direction, but and overall, I will say that I am pleased with the overall quality of the final output here. I do like the way that it renders out, but I also acknowledge that it could still be better. And with that in mind, let's take a deep dive into fixing it. So, for this, first things first, I'm going to dig into the hypergraph. I will select these guys. Let's just start closing things out if I don't need it. Don't need that either. What I need is the hypergraph. That's not the hypergraph. There we go. Foliage. Alright, so all of this is selected. And look at all that. That's a lot. That's a lot of junk. Don't need any of that, really. What I will end up creating will be more geometrically complex than that. It will be more complex than what I currently have, and it will be more expensive in the way of render time, but overall the quality will be better, and that is the important thing. So I'm going to hide this for now, because I can. And now, let's see if I can remember where this tool is. I probably should have relocated where this tool is before I did the whole drum roll and everything. Let's see. See, now I just feel like an idiot. Oh, that's not it. That's not actually the tool that I need. No, this is okay. Ah, content browser. That's what I was looking for. That's this. So it is essentially using paint effects. There are many, many, many different things that you can use. Oh wow! Look, motion capture, animations. The content browser is a source for all kinds of useful stuff, like rigs, like pre-built assets that you can use for a variety of different things. Different different effects like clouds and rain and like whatever, all kinds of crazy stuff. But that's not what we're going to be digging into right now. I could spend who knows how much time exploring everything that is possible with this, but I'm not going to get into all this. See, look at these texture assets and whatnot. But what we're going to be focusing on are, see, they have different things that are paint, like purely paint effects, but then they also have meshes. You can paint city meshes. Let's see, food mesh. Like there's food, regular food, like a paint effects food, but then there's also food mesh, which will create geometry based paint effects. So there are trees and trees mesh, and I'll be digging into the trees mesh later, but there are a variety of different tree meshes that you can create from, you know, oaks, palm trees, pines, you know, fall trees with like orange and red leaves and cherry blossoms and whatever. But what I'm looking at right now is plants mesh, and I'm going to be creating a standard bush. So I will be using this now. Actually, let me turn that layer back on so I have a sense of scale. And I will be hitting B to increase the size. And now I've created a bush. Just like that. Now, it is a little more complicated than that. Or it can be that simple, but there are extra steps involved. So let's dig into those extra steps. All right. I can change a variety of assets, a variety of, like I can change the overall density of the polygons. like the complexity of the model. Like this was at 6 by default, and that creates some fairly complex leaves and branches. But you can simplify it in order to save yourself some time, dropping it down to 4. Now 4 is fairly ideal. It retains a lot of information while still giving you a lower overall poly count. Let's try 3 and see what happens. Let's go all the way down to, I guess you can't go any lower than, I guess you can't go any lower than 3. That's interesting. So, yeah, I will keep it at 3 then. And there are a variety of things that you can do to tweak the overall look of your bush. You can change the number of steps involved, and that makes a much, you can either make a sparse bush, or you can make a super dense that actually creates, looks like that creates three bushes in one. Let's go back and make it 1. Oh, I think apparently okay. So I drew 2 bushes, and I really only wanted to create 1. Okay, so there's 1, and now I'll mess around with the I didn't want to overdo it. See, this is mostly this particular broadcast is going to be spent tweaking some changes, making some adjustments to. There's a variety of different options that you can use. Segments. You can reduce the number of segments. That's the length. That's the length minimum. And there's the length maximum. All these numbers can have a drastic impact on your overall output here. So this affects the base width of your tubes, of your branches, of your stems, and this affects the end width of it. All right. This is a fairly thin, sparsely populated bush. And that's like super. Yeah. See, a lot of this is just me toying around with different settings. Now, say for example, I was happy with this bush, that I wanted to take it and use it as a replacement for all of these bushes. If I were to render this now, this bush would not show up because by default it was given a shader that won't render in Arnold render view. which I think is kind of an oversight on the Maya developer side of things. First, you have to take the mesh and convert it from a paint effect into an actual geometric mesh. And then you have to assign new shaders. You have to assign Arnold shaders to it. So I will walk you through that now. As you can see, the bush did not show up. It has disappeared. It is an invisible bush. Oh, here's some growth aspects. Now, if we wanted to create a bush without any leaves, if we wanted to get rid of the twigs or have no branches, if we wanted to give it flowers, we could do that as well, but we're not going to. At least not on this particular issue. Oh, and here are some other controls that we'll get into right now before we do the conversion process. And that will actually help, I think, a little bit. Right now, we can reduce the number of twigs. Well, if we wanted to increase the number of twigs, we could do that. But let's just leave it at 1. Twig length. We can make the twigs longer. Twig stiffness. That doesn't really do anything here. If we wanted to twist things, we could twist it. Let's reduce the number of leaves per branch to 1. That makes it a little less dense. Number of twig clusters. We can also reduce the number of twig clusters. Make it a very sparse bush. Like, we don't have to have it be super, super that's right, drop out. Dropout kind of randomly selects branches to eliminate, like it just broke off somehow, somewhere. And the same thing, there's a leaf dropout as well. All right, that's fairly well-rounded and sparse enough that I think I'll be able to use this. Also, you can change the size of the leaves as well. Like you can increase the length, but also the width of the leaves at the base or at the tip. So there are tons of things that you can do to affect the overall look of your bushes. You can adjust all kinds of settings, like if you had flowers in that enabled, you could enable that. The curl of the petals. Like, there are so many different things that you could do to explore. But right now, I'm just going to focus on a very, very fairly simple bush. So now that I have that, I'm going to modify, convert, paint effects to polygons. Before I get too into that, I am going to go into the options box. Yes. Okay, so as I was trying this out earlier, I did not click this box for quad output, and it gave me a triangulated mess. And I don't like creating triangulated messes because it offends me as a modeler. I usually tend to just work in quads, and then, in most game engines, you have to convert it to triangles anyway, but it's a cleaner model to just model in quads. So that this is an option that makes me happy. I am also going to try and limit the number of polygons, because I don't need that many polygons in my model. I don't need anywhere near that many either. Let's just do this for now. Apply. All right. So now that is a polygon bush. So now that I have that selected, well, I did have it selected. I can select it. And here's my bush. Separated from like the wood branches and the leaves, which are selectable separately. Now I have really, really thin branches here. I could make those a bit thicker for visibility, but I'll worry about that when I make trees. Let's see if I can hit 3, and that smooth meshes everything. That's a little too much, I think. Yeah, we'll do smooth mesh on the leaves, but leave the branches kind of hardened. Keep those on 1. Oh, less. Nope. That's interesting. These leaves are kind of just floating a little detached. But I guess that's, doesn't have to be perfect. It's a lot better than these card bushes. So now that we have this, we'll have to go in. I'll run an experiment to see if it'll render at all. It probably won't. Do update. Update full scene. Yes, please. All right. Well, it looks like it has rendered out the bush, but it is not without issue, because the texture shaders that were created with Fong, and in order for it to really work well with Arnold render, they need to be Arnold shaders. So I will dig into that and make some changes to that over time. But I just wanted to show you this method because it will be very, very helpful for a lot of us doing all this nonsense, creating all of these bushes and whatnot, and that's really going to help improve the overall quality of this render, and hopefully it will improve the quality of your work as well if you're getting into environmental work to be able to create trees and bushes and whatnot fairly easily. Also, once I create a number of these bushes and get the textures the way that I want them, I will be putting those bushes up on my Patreon. But also, I will probably do an episode involving creating a Arnold stand-in. So instead of taking this bush and duplicating it a couple hundred times and spread it around the scene, I can create a stand-in object and place those stand-in objects around the scene and basically reference the bush files, and then when I hit render, all of the bushes will appear as they are intended. They'll render out beautifully, but with a significantly reduced render time, and that will be fun. So that is all I've got